for you.
You shouldn't have to look too hard, Roxy. You know he's never far from the old Sonic 7 here. But I gotta admit, he sure whipped that hunk of junk into fine shape. The engine's purring like a kitten.
She had the horsepower in her all along, Daddy-O. All she needed was a good cleaning and a few tweaks in the right places. I think she's ready to hit the track.
Say, Speedster, where'd you get that rust bucket? At Antique Bathtubs R Us?
Ratso, Greaser, and Boots, Tungsten, why do the two of you always want to make trouble?
I admit, the Sonic 7 doesn't look like much, but she'll do 0 to 78 in under 5 seconds.
Yeah, when dragons spit ice cubes, the Tempo 16 here would be crossing the finish line before you even get past the first marker.
If you say so.
If you think that Rattletrap could beat me, then bring it on, poser.
Fleet, don't let that bully get under your skin. You can't expect to catch up with him when he's got that kind of head start.
Don't worry, Roxy. I'll be right back.
Nice work, Fleet. You really do know how to make that machine hustle.
Impressive driving, young man. You're just the kind of racer we've been looking for. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Nobleton Octorod, president of the Octorod Motor Oil Company, and I'd like to sponsor you on the racing circuit.
Gee, really? That'd be swell.
Sounds like you've got a deal, Mr. Octorod. Fleet, Roxy, we better get to work preparing the Sonic 7 for some real competition.
In exploring the surface attributes of Tarot's trump cards, the Chariot holds a near-unique position among the major arcana as one of only 2 cards represented by a non-astrological physical object. Based on their titles, 10 of the cards feature people, or, in the case of the Devil, a humanesque form of the supernatural. 3 are commonly associated with virtues, 4 with celestial bodies, and 3 with existential experience. The only other tangible, non-naturally occurring object we find in Tarot's first 22 cards, an object constructed instead by human hands, is the Tower, which we will discuss later in this presentation. Thus, the characteristics of the Chariot are revealed by its intended function and observed uses. It is first and foremost a conveyance, but also at times a tool of war, an apparatus of competition, a symbol of status for those born upon it. These applications naturally lead, in turn, to such divinatory interpretations as travel, conflict, victory, forward momentum, leadership, courage, and power. Its inclusion in the earliest tarot decks is theorized to be representative of such vehicles as appeared in Roman victory parades and Renaissance triumphal processions, where heroes of the realm were proudly celebrated atop horse-drawn transports, treasures and holy relics were displayed through the streets, and nobles made public and self-aggrandizing shows of their courtly magnificence. It is arguably this aspect of the Chariot that we see in the Visconti decks, where our side view of the horses, carriage, and figure depicted puts us in the position of an observer, watching the parade pass by as we ruminate upon a glory in which we ourselves play no part. By the advent of the Marseillais pattern, however, the perspective of the Chariot had changed. No longer do we observe the image passively from the side. Instead, we witness it full-on from the front, allowing us to imagine ourselves as the driver, and by extension, taking a more active part in the Chariot experience. Now it is we who lead, we who move forward, we who hold power and engage in conflict and emerge triumphant. Or end up broken and battered and defeated as our adversaries thunder past us. For, as with all tarot cards, the Chariot is not a singular experience, but rather the many aspects of that experience encountered along the fullness of its spectrum. And so, with motion comes stillness. With power comes impotence. With conflict, harmonious partnership. With victory, defeat. Once you take the reins, you assume the risk. Indeed, one could assert that the Chariot experience carries one of the largest risks among the majors due to the very nature of the energies that set it in motion. To illustrate, let us contrast the chariot with other majors that deal with the concept of energies. In The Magician, we see the central figure actively channel energies into himself, where he will subsequently transmute them to a form which he could successfully direct toward his intended purpose. In Temperance, we see the active synthesis of extant personal energies in order to achieve a harmonious balance state. The common factor here is that the operant energies are internally forged. In contrast, the energies of the chariot exist in a state that are fully external to the charioteer. The chariot's driver is not the car, nor its wheels, nor its horses, nor does he comprise any portion of the physical mechanisms that propel the vehicle he occupies forward. And yet, without his presence, these energies run wild and directionless. Their potential is squandered, dissipating without having been put to good use. Dangerous though it may be, it is the role of the charioteer to harness and guide this untethered dynamism toward a productive end, and, should he succeed, to deservedly reap the resulting rewards. Interestingly, the two most famous tarots of the 20th century, the Waite-Smith Rider deck and the Crowley-Harris Thoth tarot, forego any illustrative emphasis on the chariot's motion and the charioteer's skill in directing it. In both decks, the chariot is clearly at rest, although this is not antithetical to its nature, since, as already discussed, every tarot experience is not merely comprised of a single idea, but rather the spectrum of a concept that includes its opposite expressions. However, in choosing to focus on the card's esoteric minutiae over the more practical and dynamic aspects of its application, an opportunity is arguably missed. We lean into the card's laundry list of meanings without learning much about how to use the chariot's lesson in our day-to-day lives. In contrast, many contemporary decks have restored the active elements to the chariot's design. A particularly salient example can be seen in Gainsworth and Rodway's Tarot of the Old Path, where the arcana's intense energies and the charioteer's skill in controlling them is reflected in their renaming of the card, Mastery. Here, we see 4 horses representing the 4 elements of fire, water, air, and earth. Each element brings its own unique potentiality to the task at hand, but left on their own, possess no method by which to coordinate their efforts. It is up to the charioteer to take the reins and direct the raw but powerful forces toward a suitable goal. His upraised right hand holds not a whip, but a sprig of hazel leaf, a suggestion that perhaps brute force is not the best method for driving the team. The hazel tree being a symbol of knowledge in the Celtic and Wiccan tradition, the sprig represents the idea that leadership of the team is best served through intellect, skill, and diplomacy. We are asked to bear in mind that the use of these methods over more autocratic or violent techniques does not in any way lessen the effectiveness of the charioteer. Instead, they enhance the long-term viability of the charioteer's goals by encouraging a greater degree of voluntary cooperation from the team and by reducing the amount of effort required from the charioteer himself to keep the entire structure moving forward.
That freaking Fleet speedster. No matter what I do, I can't beat him.
It's that car of his. He treats it like there ain't nothing more important in the world. And when he's driving it, it's like he and that machine are one and the same. He can get it to do anything.
Yeah, that car. That car. It clearly means the world to him. So, it sure would be a shame if something were to happen to it.
Sonic 7! My life's work destroyed!
But, Fleet, it's just a little divot.
Yeah, son. We could tap that right out in a jiffy.
What a shame. How will Fleet Speedster ever race again without a car that's in absolutely perfect condition? He just might have to retire altogether, or that car could get damaged again.
How long has he been in there, Daddy-O?
It's been months, Roxy. Ever since the incident, he won't leave the Sonic 7 side.
Yeah, since he won't ever come out of the garage, we have to bring him food from Taco Star every day. Come on.
Hey, Fleet, we brought you some tacos.
Set him on the workbench, Lightning.
Look who's come for a visit. It's Roxy.
Hey, Fleet, do you mind if I go play with those old rags, gas cans, and matches in the corner?
Sure.
Thanks. Gee, Fleet, I was hoping you'd go to the farmer's market tomorrow. There's a vegetable vendor there who sells these weird carrots shaped like... Oh.
Lightning, get away from there!
Quickly, everyone get in!
Wow, that was pretty close. You saved us, Fleet, but poor Sonic 7, she's a mess.
What's important is that you're all safe, Roxy. As for the Sonic 7, well, I guess I'll just have to start again.
We now turn our attention to the other artificial structure depicted within the Major Arcana, the Tower. It is one of the 4 missing cards from the original Visconti Sforza tarot, so we must turn to the later woodcut print tarots for examples of its earliest template. Most of these decks depict a lightning-struck or burning building from which figures flee or fall, although at least one pattern, known as the Belgian tarot, shows a flaming tree in place of a building. By itself, the structure in the illustration suggests a very static experience. In contrast to the chariot, the tower is incapable of movement. It is fixed, restrictive, and immobile. Often shown to be constructed of brick or stone, it further suggests the containment of something deemed in need of protection or to otherwise be kept apart from the outside world. But many are the accounts of such restrictions outliving their usefulness. From fairy tale princesses locked within castle walls, to individuals and institutions leaving treasures and manuscripts to languish fruitlessly within closed vaults, there is evident tragedy in denying such valuable abilities and resources from achieving their full potential. While all things, the strongest stone included, may eventually yield to the erosion of time, the tower's refusal to voluntarily release the assets it hoards means opportunity lost. Thus, we see the application of an external force is required to tear open that which is mutated from sanctuary to prison. The key characteristic of this force is that it will come for the tower whether or not we invite it. Indeed, more often than not, the metaphorical lightning bolt comes as a surprise, even when we should have distinctly anticipated its arrival. Its powerful and violent energy shatters the carefully constructed and maintained edifice into random chunks of debris that are no longer suited for any constructive purpose. All we can do is clean up the mess and prepare to start anew. It is interesting to observe that as tarot symbolism is carried forward into the late 20th and early 21st centuries, the basic elements of the tower illustration seem to have changed little from those of the historical patterns. While the central structure depicted may be updated to appear more in line with modern architecture, the key dramatic elements, the lightning bolt, the falling figures, the crumbling of the tower itself, remains more or less the same. For a slightly more unique take on the tower, let us turn to perhaps a more unexpected source, Crowley and Harris's Thoth Tarot. As with the Waite-Smith deck, Crowley and Harris's tower was forged from the metaphysical concepts taught by the Golden Dawn. Yet, unlike the Waite-Smith deck and its historical predecessors, Crowley eschewed the use of the lightning bolt to represent the agent of the tower's destruction. Instead, a demonic-looking mouth arises from the abyss below the tower, striking at the base with a fiery breath that destroys the structure's very foundation. By flipping the source of the demolishing force from the top to the bottom, Crowley gives us an alternative way of looking at the tower experience. While the lightning bolt suggests that we have built up a system of false belief that must be discarded, Crowley's hellmouth suggests that we need to go further. From Crowley's perspective, it can be argued that it is not merely our beliefs that are incorrect. Rather, he suggests that the fundamental assumptions upon which those beliefs are based is flawed. Thus, the mere dismantling of our conclusions is of no use if we insist on rebuilding upon a faulty foundation. Or, to put it another way,
Well, the king said it was daft to build a castle on a swamp, but I built it all the same, just to show him. It sank into the swamp, so I built a second one. That sank into the swamp. So I built a third one. That burned down, fell over, then sank into the swamp, but the fourth one stayed up.
it is important to bear in mind that the base must be thoroughly reviewed from scratch, and its actual integrity either verified or discarded for a more robust starting point, before we may begin again.
It's a beautiful day for racing here at the Rota Fortuna track. And as the drivers pull up to the starting line, the crowd goes wild for Ratso Greaser, who's on the cusp of breaking the all-time winning streak, formerly held by the legendary Fleet Speedster before his abrupt retirement.
Once I win this, I'm sure to land that sweet sponsorship with Octorod Motor Oil. I'll be the most famous and richest racer the sport has ever seen.
Wait, what's this? There's a new competitor pulling up to the starting line. No, not a new racer. It's Fleet Speedster. He's back on the track and it looks like he's ready to give Ratso a run for his money.
No, it can't be. He'll ruin everything. Boots!
Yes, boss?
Why don't you pay our friend Fleet a little visit before one of this leaks to the press?
Right. Before anything leaks. Listen to the crowd cheering for you, Fleet. They're thrilled to see you back on the track.
I just hope I don't disappoint them. I got the Sonic 7 back into shape, but she may not run like she used to. Don't worry, Fleet. In the end, it's the driver, not the car, that wins the race. That said, I'd better get over to the pit. Even a top-notch driver like you still needs to keep his car running.
It looks like the race is about to start. Good luck, Fleet. Yo, mushy soft. I'm gonna find somewhere else to be. Oh no! Fleet!
Having concluded our separate analyses of the chariot and the tower, we are ready to explore how the two cards complement each other within the schema of the major arcana. We have already identified their particular symbolic status as objects of man-made origin. Furthermore, we have seen by implication how both are concerned with the action of energies that are external to ourselves or to the querents we counsel. How, then, can the experiences of the two cards feel so different, even disparate? Why do we naturally feel the impulse to embrace our encounters with the chariot and reject our engagement with the tower? For this last question, it is tempting to frame the answer in terms of pleasant and unpleasant events, wins and losses, victories and defeats. And within the context of any given reading, it isn't necessarily unfair to view these cards in such a way. But if we desire to dig a bit deeper and investigate not simply the whats, but the whys, then perhaps we could benefit by analyzing the spectrum of another characteristic shared by both cards, the nature of their motion. We have discussed the idea of motion, both overtly and implicitly, in our separate examinations of the chariot and the tower. Let us now compare these cards directly so that we can better understand the importance of what each has to teach us regarding this valuable subject. For purposes of this analysis, we will define the term motion somewhat broadly to mean not merely the process of changing a physical location, but of the active changing of one's circumstances. In other words, we will not be afraid to embrace the metaphorical use of the terms motion and movement to describe progress toward or away from an objective, whether it be a physical or psychological one, or both. Having settled on our definition, we next turn to crafting the spectrum of interest. The ends of this spectrum are not, as might be inferred from the preceding comments, a measure of whether we are moving toward or away from something. Instead, we will be examining the amount of motion present, from none at all to an imaginary frictionless scenario that permits unrestricted and unfettered travel. To illustrate this, we will label the extremes of our spectrum as stillness and liberty. With the spectrum set, we can now see where each object, in its purest state, naturally falls on this scale. The tower, absent the lightning bolt, sits squarely at the point of stillness, while the chariot, lacking the charioteer, will greatly tend toward liberty. However, while there is arguably a time and a place for all things, the ultimate natural state of the universe is a recalibration of things back towards a state of equilibrium or balance. Thus, it is not in the long-term best interest of either of these objects to remain implanted at their respective extremes. Eventually, nature will seek to pull both back toward a more central point. To the extent that we can harmoniously align ourselves with this process of recalibration, both cards can prove beneficial to our overall well-being. However, if we work in resistance of or opposition to these operations, chances are high that we will initiate or prolong our own suffering. In order to facilitate this equilibrium, then, we begin by adding the charioteer to the chariot. As he grabs the reins, he begins to restrict the vehicle's unregulated and disorganized energies. His actions bring order to the chaos and prevent the unnecessary waste of effort on fruitless pursuits. The chariot reaches its ideal balance point when the charioteer, with minimal effort, can point at the goal and know that the conveyance will naturally follow to focus on that goal. At his best, the charioteer properly maintains the chariot and secures the cooperation of the team that draws it. He restrains the chariot only as needed in order to avoid the needless dissipation of energy that drains forward momentum. Should he overexercise his authority, he risks overshooting the point of equilibrium and bringing endeavors to a screeching halt. Conversely, should he apply his control of the reins and goad injudiciously, he may lose control entirely, thus returning the entire amalgamation to a state of anarchy. On the opposite end, we achieve the tower's equilibrium through the introduction of the lightning bolt or other interrupting force. Its sudden disruption of the tower's immutable nature is surprising and chaotic, yet there is no other way to release that which is trapped inside. It is the tower's destruction that propels its contents back into motion, allowing formerly confined potential to once again be realized. The tower reaches its ideal balance point when the lightning bolt acts according to its nature, breaking down walls and casting out that which dwells within. The desires of the occupants are irrelevant. The lightning bolt does not act with sentimentality, it is purely pragmatic. In contrast to the chariot, it promotes disorganization and independence, forcing energies into chaos so that they are free to recombine into new adaptive forms. However, for best results, the lightning bolt must remain a surgical strike. It should excise only what is in need of release, nothing less, nothing more. Too little force, and it is too easy for the occupants to rebuild as before, perhaps even fortifying the tower further to tighten its grip. Too much force, and the bolt risks extending beyond that which is in need of emancipation, spilling over into a scorched earth scenario that takes the good with the bad. These observations, then, set the stage for the interplay of the two cards. As the formerly pent-up energies of the tower chaotically careen back toward the liberty end of the spectrum, they are met by the chariot, which harnesses and redirects them back into productive use. But when the charioteer begins to exert an excessive amount of control by defining and directing the use of those energies too narrowly, Pushing the balance back toward the stillness end of the scale, the lightning bolt reemerges to loosen his grip on the reins. To the extent that this interplay of rein and release can remain relatively close at one side or the other of the equilibrium point, the corrective measures of the charioteer and the lightning bolt need not be overly harsh or unpleasant. But when one force or the other is allowed too much license, and the energies in play are pushed near the spectrum extremes, the remedy is bound to feel highly disagreeable. Thus, the two cards together teach us something that each alone cannot. In contrast to the myriad of arcana that are more focused on exploring the work of internal energies, the magician, the high priestess, temperance, the moon, and others, the chariot and the tower encourage us to explore the nature of energies that operate externally. They help us to understand the agency we possess to control them, and to recognize and appreciate when we cannot. And they provide us with the tools that allow us to work with those energies in a harmonious fashion, in service of the great work of spiritual transcendence.
Even after having to rebuild her, the Sonic 7 is still performing well. I'm easily outpacing most of the other drivers. Still, something doesn't feel quite right.
Well, if it isn't the triumphant return of Fleet Speedster. It's a real gas to see you, Fleet, but I know you won't be able to say the same about me.
What the?
Daddy-o, the Sonic 7, it's sprung a leak from the gas tank. Fleet won't be able to finish the race unless we fix it.
A leak? Impossible! I checked everything myself 3 times, including a thorough inspection at the starting line. There's no way the Sonic 7 could have a leak. Unless... Ratso! This has to be his doing. Come on, Roxy. We gotta flag Fleet into the pit on his next pass.
They're trying to bring me into the pit, and the Sonic 7 sure feels like she needs some help. But it's the last lap. If I stop now, I'll never be able to catch up to Ratso. I can tell I'm slowing, but if I can get just one more burst of speed out of the Sonic 7, I should be able to... See you at the finish line, Ratso. Oil will be waiting for you there.
Brilliant move, son. What an amazing finish.
I couldn't have done it without Lightning here. When I couldn't push any harder, he released exactly what the Sonic 7 needed to overcome her handicap.
Ah, shucks, Fleet. You always know what to do, no matter how bad things get.
Well, I think I know exactly what I want to do right now.
Ew, more mushy stuff. All this kissing's gonna make me slick.